is it so quiet?
Waiting for your countdown, Byron.
Oh, 3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2, 1, action. Well, good morning. I would now like to call to order it's not May, it is most certainly June, the June 2022 meeting of the State Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bess. Here. Ms. DeLosa.
Here.
Mr. Durham.
Present.
Dr. Ernest.
Here.
Dr. Freitas. Mr. Gastineau.
Here.
Mr. Mapes.
Here.
Ms. Moat.
Here.
Ms. Rentschler. Looks like you're here. Mr. Watts.
Here.
Dr. Jenner.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the May 4th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So a few things that I would like to update you on. We've had a lot happening over the past few weeks since we saw you last. Probably one of the biggest things that no doubt shook all of us is the tragedy in Texas. Anytime there's something that happens within a school, regardless of where it is, it always hits us as educators, as families, as parents, as communities. And so that is absolutely on our mind, and as a state, we will for sure be watching as they solidify and determine what happened that day, as they collect the data and make suggestions to the state. That will be very, very, very top of mind for us to review so that we can then look at Indiana and determine how we might review and improve. Couple of things that I did mention in the weekly newsletter to everyone, the Friday before Memorial Day, so I'm not sure how many people read that in the weekly newsletter, quite frankly, but I do want to highlight a couple of things, really, really important. Number one, our schools, just over the past several years, have applied for and received over $110 million from the state to deploy money in ways, whether it's building secure entry, whether it's supporting mental health services. So that is something that, looking at the coming session, we're already in discussion on what we could do to improve that line item. The other thing is, and this was prior to even our team getting here, Indiana has been for years robust in the school safety training. And I have to give a huge shout out to Director Steve Valco, who's been leading this work for several years within the department. The third week in May, we hosted in Indianapolis 900 school safety specialists from around the state of Indiana. Of course, the school safety specialist could include SROs, could include teachers, principals, etc. We also hosted a couple other states, Utah and Kentucky were also present to see what was happening, what has been happening in that space. And then in the fall was already planned, and the projection prior to the Texas tragedy was 1,400 to 1,500 to attend that. We will likely have an uptick as we should, and it's a great thing. that will be in the fall. So wanted to start and of course mention that. The other thing I would like to make sure that the board, that you're aware of is again, some of the tactical pieces that we continue to move forward as a team. One is we have 70 elementary schools or 70 schools who are opting in to the literacy coaching, science of reading coaching, or the STEM coaching. So that training is up and going. We also, as I've briefed you the past couple of meetings, launched the second iteration of Indiana's federal funding dashboard. This iteration not only says how much money a certain school corporation received and what they have remaining to spend, but this also breaks down by category how a school is spending the dollars. We see currently as a state, obviously instruction is our highest spend, but we'll continue to watch that and support our schools in spending this money intentionally and strategically. There will be a third iteration that Courtney Scoffsma is leading, so more to come on that in the future. We also launched, we talk a lot about rethinking the 11th and 12th grade year and certainly have more discussions ahead on that as a board. We launched, to complement the already established rural early college network, we launched an urban early college network because what we saw in our data is really our urban schools, we need to step on the gas to make sure those students have access to some of the intentional coursework that can lead them to a higher educational attainment level. Since our last meeting, we also had two major grants that were due to the department, so an update there on the Explore, Engage, and Experience grant. It was a $25 million budget amount. We had $97 million in request, which I know we've talked about as a board. Our communities and our educators and our partners are just really, really eager to move the needle on access to work-based learning, access to post-secondary credentials of value, increasing career exploration at a younger age. So update there. The employability skills grant closed about 10 days ago. We had that was about a $7 million budget line. We had about a $16 million request. So, and that is again a pilot for piloting our skills. As you know, we have just June and July. Many people think our schools are completely closed and quiet. June, as we all chuckle in the room. That is not true. Our schools are actually very, very active. And so June and July across the state, we have a lot of action happening. We, of course, have our student learning happening and our educator learning happening. With regard to the students, we've deployed over $150 million across the state over a 2-year period to support intentional summer learning and literacy, STEM, and college and career readiness. So, in fact, I just ran into the president of Boys and Girls Club of St. Joseph County in the State House walking over, and they are doing a lot of work. They've really expanded their services up there as one example. In terms of the opportunities for our educators to continue learning, so many opportunities there as well. Sunday, June 26th kicks off Computer Science Professional Development Week, so we're expecting many, many educators to join that. We also launched this year, and Dr. Estes will share more later today, but the Attract, Prepare, Retain Connection Point Summer Conferences. And I called it conferences, and I slipped there. It's actually summits, because you think about a typical conference, which is often a sit and get. This was completely designed to be interactive, to be solution finding right there at that meeting. So they have, various school leaders also with, whether it's Department of Ed, higher education, others, all there to try to work through some challenges. We will be announcing, and have not yet, but we will be announcing additional grant dollars to support initiatives that come out of that or others that people have. And I would say think grow your own, think career ladders, think about some of those. On that note, today, following the consent agenda, we will hear from Dr. Estes on an update on the Educator pipeline, as well as we'll be hearing from our foster youth update, and are thrilled to have Maggie Stevens here and a couple of our members and others online. So on that note, that concludes my board chair comments, and I would offer the same opportunity for other board members if you have comments at this time.
Just congratulations to our colleague here who won a state championship this past weekend.
Yep.
As someone who never got one of those blue rings, I'm pretty jealous. So that is quite a feat. So congrats.
I'm so glad you said that, BJ, because I told him, I said, prepare your words because I'm going to call you out. And since I did not, thank you, BJ, for calling.
It's like, oh yeah, we want to stay on Saturday.
So state champion, how does it feel, Coach?
Wow.
This is your ESPN interview on State Board of Ed.
It's awesome. I mean, it's just, we've got a great group of kids, as many of us know on the board, the power of sports for our kids, the home it gives. We had, it saved some kids post-COVID. I mean, it really, the light turned back on in their soul and their eyes. It was just amazing. It was a great run. It's our third since 2018, so lacrosse is up and coming in the state of Indiana, boys and girls. It's growing at Evansville. St. Joe up in South Bend won the Division I state championship. Guerin Catholic and Carmel battled for a state championship for the girls, and Guerin won. So it's fun. It's just a great opportunity for kids, and another opportunity outside of baseball and track, just more opportunity for Hoosier kids. So.
What colleges are recruiting you now?
Hopefully none, because he's also Teacher of the Year for his school, and we
Well,
want
that was an ESPN question. That's what they
fair.
ask, right?
To be honest, I don't think I could catch a lacrosse ball if someone threw it at me. I'm a wrestler by trade. I just help, so I'm just the assistant.
Very, very good. Any other board comments or questions for our state champion here? All right, on that note, let's have our public comment. Let's start with Hazeka Israel.
Hi, good morning to
Good
you all.
morning.
Peace be with you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm concerned for our children and the violence that has been occurring, such as the mass shootings and crimes occurring in our schools throughout our country. According to Cato.org, 94% of mass shootings in schools occur in public schools, while private schools are only 6%. I believe the root cause for this is because God, our Creator, has been stamped out of our schools. When children have in their mind that they are made in the marvelous image of God, that God sees all things, and that God shall judge each person at some point in time according to their actions, either in this lifetime or in the lifetime to come, it can help to brittle evil actions in our children. However, when our children are taught not to discuss the things of God, when they're taught that they come from monkeys through the theory of evolution, how can we expect our children not to act like wild monkeys? While one of the founding principles of our nation is that government would not implement an established religion, not allowing discussion on the things of God is establishing a religion. It's establishing a religion of anti-God, which is not right and unconstitutional. Now, to propose a solution for this problem, My preference would be to establish a class that would teach our children to worship only God, our Creator, to recognize that there is a judgment day coming for our actions, and to therefore keep the essential commandments of God, including those that teach us to love God and to treat our neighbors as ourselves. However, because I understand that in a public school we are dealing with both parents and children who, having the privilege of possessing the gift of free will from God, we're likely going to have a difference of opinion on this topic. I therefore am proposing at least a comparative religions class, which would allow different local ministers to schedule time to teach their views about God to our children, and then allow our children to peacefully debate and discuss the things taught in an effort to help determine what is taught is true or not. At least in this way, we could get the consideration and the acknowledgement of God back in our schools. Thank you for hearing me today, and have a great day.
Thank you, Hezekiah. This time, I will invite Kendra Johnson.
Good morning
morning.
to each and every one of you. My name is Kendra S. Johnson, and I have been an educational advocate for over 25 years. I started with my own children, and then I started with each of their schools, then public housing, and then the city of Gary, Indiana, and then the state. And by going to various Title I conferences across the country, all of America. First, I would like to say congratulations to each and every graduate, whether it's preschool, kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade, high school, college. I am a blessed mother and grandmother because this year, on May 11th, my son, Kendrick Horton, received his degree in computer science from Purdue Fort Wayne. And he was also interviewed by Fox News Fort Wayne. What brought me even more joy was the fact that he had no problem saying, I am from Gary, Indiana. And that's where I got my education in the beginning. Then I was blessed to go to my grandson's 8th grade graduation. And even though he lost his little brother in a fire in 2016 at my home, he still was able to pull through that tragedy to finish getting his promotion from 8th grade and now on to high school. And as of this week, as the Lord wills, I will be attending my oldest grandson's graduation in Chicago. He also started in the Gary schools. He will be going to Loyola. He received a full ride to Loyola University. And I say all that to say this. I'm a single mother with 6 children and raised them for 22 years in public housing. My oldest is 37, my youngest will be 21 in September. It is possible, but for it to happen, there has to be a partnership between educators, administrators, state board, our legislators, and most of all, parents and students. Students must be involved because it is their education. And so my heart goes out to Uvalde, Texas, because school shootings are not anything new. I remember that there were a few school shootings in Gary, Indiana. They didn't happen in the schools, but outside of the schools. And one of the biggest things I've noticed in all the cases is the idea of bullying. And I can't think of any school shooting in which the individual, the perpetrator, did not state at one time or another they were bullied. I understand that because I was bullied, and I'm 57 years old. And that's what caused me to go from public school to private school. And here we are, over 40 years later, still having to deal with the idea of bullying and mental illness. Because in some of those cases, the bullying got to a point that it broke those individuals to the point of no return. So I say all that to say this. While we're looking at the public safety of our children, we also need to look at the emotional status of our children. And not just what's going on in school. If they've lost a loved one, that hits. If their home has been broken up, that hits. COVID, that hit. Not being accepted by their peers, that hits. These are all major things that we need to look at, and we need to come together. I've heard stories of teachers who saw a child that was about to do something and stopped them. But that was over 30 years ago. 37. So, once again, my plea is always for the children. It always has been. And as I get ready to put together workshops for parents, I will also try to see to it to partner with other individuals who can talk about some of these issues that I brought before you. And I hope that you will continue to attempt to work with us to try and make things better for our children for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kendra. This time, Jarrell Blakely.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very excited about being here. I wanted to introduce myself to the State Board of Education. My name is Jarrell Blakely, and I am the new Director of Government, Community, and Racial and Social Justice for the Indiana State Teachers Association. I know that's a long title, so I'll say it again. Director of Government, Community, and Racial and Social Justice. I'm very excited about being a new Hoosier, and I'm looking forward to working with the State Board of Education and making sure that our relationship is characterized by respect, collaboration, and focusing on how we can improve the educational experience of Hoosier students. I really believe that ISTA is an organization that wants to make a very positive impact for our children. It says teachers in our organizational title, but we are all about students. And so I had an opportunity to meet Dr. Jenner. We're going to have some barbecue soon later this summer.
I hope so, and now you've publicly said it. So I'm
Exactly.
sure that's going to happen.
But I really want you all to know that I am available to talk. I know we may not agree on everything, but I think we can find items of mutual sort of agreement, making sure that educators are equipped to educate Hoosier students. There are many issues before us as we grapple the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, as well as dealing with issues related to teacher recruitment, teacher compensation, curriculum, and other issues facing Indiana students and public education in general. And so I'm very pleased about being here. I look forward to meeting each and every single one of you to figure out ways we can work together and collaborate and really, at the end of the day, make public education work here in Hoosier State. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jarrell, and welcome to Indiana. From New Jersey, right?
Yeah, New Jersey.
Yes. We're always glad to recruit people away from other states. Okay, so that ends public comment. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? With no discussion, let's, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. So we have, as I shared with you, couple of presentations today. So let's go ahead and pull up the first one, which is the Educator Profession Pipeline presentation. Dr. Rebecca Estes, the floor is
morning.
yours.
Absolutely. I'll borrow your table there. Thank you again, Dr. Jenner and board. I want to say congratulations to all Indiana.
Rebecca, you might
Yep.
have to pull your mic a little bit
That
so
better?
the people at home, I think
Perfect.
so. Thank you.
Okay. I'll wait for our slides to load here.
So 1 second on the slide.
Okay. We had fun with slides yesterday at that first Attract, Prepare, Retain Summit. It was a tech challenge, but we got there.
Okay, good.
I'll go ahead and dive in, and then Brian, you can catch up with me. No, you're good. I want to say thank you to Dr. Jenner and board for having me here to speak today. I also want to start by congratulating all Indiana educators on the completion of the 21-22 school year. Hopefully, as we said at June 8th, we're all there. As a former elementary educator and administrator, I know this is the season for planning, preparation, and professional growth. Also, I know many have answered the calling to continue working with our students throughout the summer, but I hope you also take a moment to yourself to breathe and reflect and relax. Our educators are critical to the success of every strategy and initiative, and as a mom of four, 3 who are still in our schools, I'm especially grateful to their teachers and all educators across the state for your commitment to Indiana students and their future success. As Senior Director of Educator Talent, I have the honor of leading many of the key initiatives that fall under the department's Educator Talent Quality and Value pillar. That said, we all know that everything great happens through a team effort, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we also have amazing licensing, higher ed, and special ed teams that collaborate in this space to ensure the best possible outcomes for Indiana educators and ultimately all of our students.
We're able to advance.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Before I dive into the work being done to support key initiatives, I want to share some context and data about the Ed Pipeline. First, I want to acknowledge that we have access to an incredible amount of data. The amount of data we collect makes several other state agencies envious. I was on a call with someone from Texas's DOE, Office of Data and Research, recently, and they're currently having beginning discussions related to collecting statewide vacancy data. While our efforts to base guidance and decisions on reliable data has at times been limited by the timing and method of collection, I do appreciate that we've had something in place, a starting point to grow from as we move forward, and we're doing just that moving forward. I know I don't need to outline the difference between qualitative and quantitative data, but I do want to emphasize that where we have gaps in quantitative data, we as humans tend to rely quite a bit on qualitative data. An example of this is when we hear very general statements like there's an educator shortage. However, more comprehensive data sets give us the specificity needed to bring that statement to life in ways that allow us to be laser focused on providing support and guidance that has the potential to be more impactful than broader, less focused strategies. For instance, we look at this data on the screen that tells us there were 1,041,539 public school students and 60,369 teachers in 2012. And in 2021, the student count decreased by 7,903, and there was an increase of 654 teachers over that 8-year period of time. Looking at that data alone, you might not immediately identify a significant problem in the pipeline. If we dive into a different data set related to the educator pipeline, the light blue represents public school students receiving special education services, and the dark blue represents special education teachers. In 2012, there were 158,775 students receiving special education services and 6,703 teachers providing those services. Fast forward to 2021, and there's been an increase of 13,558 students receiving special education services and a decrease of 890 teachers providing those services over that period of time. Without going into the specific numbers here, you can also see there's a slight downward trend in teachers entering the profession and a slight upward trend in teachers exiting the profession. This is also great data to consider, but for me, it really just leads me to wonder how many of those exiting are due to retirements, relocations to another state, into a role outside of the K-12 space, and I have about 100 other questions I could list, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to. This is when the quality and comprehensiveness of data collection becomes extremely important so that we can collectively target strategies that have the potential to impact very specific measurable outcomes, such as ISEAL. And we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm sure many of you in the room can relate to overextending yourself. I've been guilty of this and probably will find myself doing it periodically throughout the rest of my life. However, I truly feel that the key initiatives under the Educator Talent, Quality, and Value pillar drive our team's work and provide a structure for ensuring that our yeses are tied to desired outcomes and our nos are justified to ensure time, energy, and effort is focused on the priority work. We strive to elevate the mission and value of K-12 educators through our statewide participation in national recognition programs such as CCSSO's National Teacher of the Year, National History Teacher of the Year, and the Milken Educator Award, which allow us to shine a spotlight on educators who are so deserving. We've also collaborated with our higher ed prep team to provide support and guidance to many grow your own programs and teacher residencies within the state aimed at recruiting a diverse candidate pool and candidates to fill high need subject areas. In addition, our team works to provide guidance and support to schools as they provide career ladder opportunities and other professional and leadership development opportunities. At the state level, we've hosted Teacher Leaders Boot Camp annually to empower teacher leaders across the state to be change agents while maintaining their role in the classroom. Through this program, over 150 teacher leaders across the state have connected with like-minded professionals, and it's resulted in a 93% retention rate in the classroom. Of those reported as leaving the classroom in that group, less than 1% left the profession, and the others took on leadership roles outside the school-based role they had at the time of their participation. We try to be as inclusive as possible when brainstorming collaborative solutions and aim to bring people together to build the collective capacity of everyone who has a vested interest in ensuring our Indiana students have the best opportunities. And to bring things back to the data conversation we started with, our passion project and a key component of Governor Holcomb's 2022 Next Level agenda has been launching the first phase of the statewide supply and demand educator marketplace. As we continue to develop the educator supply and demand marketplace, we're creating a tool that will allow us to understand more about the supply from our current educator workforce and the educator preparation programs and the real-time demand for specific positions within all of our schools. This comprehensive data can be leveraged to make sure we are continuing to support and strengthen our state educator pipeline. As of right now, we have 2 buckets of participants. There are schools opted into NIMBL's full applicant tracking system. This provides a variety of HR resources, as well as the added feature of having postings push out to national recruitment platforms such as Indeed and ZipRecruiter, which allow us to recruit from other states, like from New Jersey and others.
Exactly.
This is due to contractual perks NIMBL has with those platforms for their full ATS users. We also have schools who decided not to fully utilize the ATS at this time, but still have access through NIMBL to direct post to the statewide job board. Before we launched the first phase, we spent a lot of time reviewing feedback and talking to folks who had lived through the 2017 transition to teachers to ensure that when we made a change to the existing job bank, we were taking into account as much constructive feedback to ensure we could fully commit to a platform that met the goals of being user-friendly, providing access to comprehensive supply and demand data, and being flexible enough to adapt based on Indiana-specific needs. Then we started the search for possibilities. We knew we needed so much more than a job board. Early conversations with NIMBL, the provider of the platform, sparked hope that we could engage in a statewide implementation of a product they already had successfully implemented in schools within 13 other states and within Indianapolis Public School System on a small scale, work with them to build out the statewide data dashboard, and create a side of the platform that would allow us to visualize real-time data about current and future educator supply through collaborative efforts with our educator preparation programs, using a candidate profile feature that schools will eventually be able to access to recruit potential future candidates. In March, when we launched the outward-facing demand side of the marketplace, or the job board, we had a goal of 75 schools utilizing the platform during the first initialization. As of mid-April, there were only 19 traditional public schools who hadn't used the platform. After reaching out directly to offer additional support and guidance, that number dropped to just a few by the beginning of May. And as of right now, every single school that has vacancies in our traditional public schools has utilized the system and posted jobs. We have one that has not. Superintendent says they're fully staffed, probably the only one in the state. The platform allows job seekers to narrow their search by a variety of criteria, and we're continuing to take feedback and make adjustments that will create a more user-friendly experience. Additionally, the existence of the platform will allow us to proactively meet the legislative requirement related to advertising roles within schools that plan to utilize the flexibility of issuing a local adjunct permit. More guidance on this will be going out to schools to ensure hiring managers know that process to post, as well as information that will be candidate-facing on how to search for those specific positions. As we talk more about the second phase of work and building out the supply side, I feel like it's important to emphasize that this will be unique to the state of Indiana. The product we're guiding Nimble to create doesn't exist anywhere else in the education space. There are services that advertise similar components, but comprehensively, nothing comes close to what we're aiming to achieve for Indiana, and I'm excited to share that data dashboard very soon. If you happen to navigate to the statewide job board with a desire to find an employment opportunity with an Indiana school using the link, at a glance, you'll see over 4,000 jobs posted. These include any school-based roles that schools have posted, from administration, teaching, custodial, transportation, etc. Candidates can filter searches by job category, organization, grade level, school, and employment type. In the near future, there will also be a mappable search option that allows for a search based on location within the state. Once a candidate finds a job they are interested in applying to, one of two things happens. They're prompted to create a candidate profile in Nimble if the school is fully opted into using Nimble's applicant tracking system, and the application process is completed seamlessly. Or for schools who are using the job posting only feature, will link back to their local application process. The candidate application process feels modern and seamless when utilizing Nimble's full applicant tracking system and can be done easily on any device. The hope is that in the long term, all schools would utilize this option so the Nimble candidate profile can be easily used by candidates as the foundation to apply for any Indiana school-based role. School leaders who are posting positions have provided positive feedback on the ease of use. In fact, I posted a couple jobs the other day, and it was probably the easiest thing I've ever done in my career. Nimble provided options for training modules, but again, the AI-embedded walkthrough support makes it fairly simple to navigate for users who are maybe even a little less than tech savvy. Currently, schools who desire to post a job navigate to hirenimble.com, log into the website. If they're configured as a job poster, their account automatically looks different than a candidate login would appear. For this reason, we originally gave job posting access to superintendents and job posters who previously had that access through DOE Online, based on their official school email address. This allows users to use a personal email address in the future if they wish to create a candidate account. Once a super admin user exists in each school, they can authorize additional job posters and edit the users within their entity. This allows schools to regularly update their roles without needing to go through a third party or the department if staff changes occur. However, we do have the ability to make those changes on the back end if needed. When posting a job, schools have choices on the criteria they list in their posting. This will make it easy for schools when they post positions that they deem eligible for employment under a locally issued adjunct permit. They'll be able to indicate that as a licensure option or the local adjunct permit in place of a licensure option, advertise in the posting, and accept candidate applications just like they would with any other role. If you haven't had the opportunity to check out the outward-facing job board, I encourage you to do so and openly invite you to provide feedback if you see things that might benefit the candidate user experience or the job poster experience. In addition to the creation of the Educator supply and demand marketplace, the department team continues to collaborate with professionals through the Learning Lab to provide real-time, educator-driven professional development. Led by Diana Gill, these efforts have provided opportunities for teacher leaders around the state to share and learn from one another, and more than 21,000 members have joined to date. As a person who thrives on challenging myself to do and learn more, it doesn't surprise me at all that we have so many educators across the state who not only remain committed to Indiana students and our amazing profession, but to take on the challenge of continuing to grow professionally. And most of the time they do it so quietly, you wouldn't even know it was happening if it weren't for the metrics.
We were actually briefed on that last month by Diana Smith, and since last meeting, it's actually now over 22,000.
Of course
data
it is,
came in
because
yesterday.
it continues to grow. You can't
It
keep up
is,
with,
so,
except
yeah.
Diana. I remember she keeps up with the numbers on Thanksgiving. Yes,
she
I do
does.
recall that.
That's right.
One thing that I can say for certain is that the task of attracting, preparing, and retaining Indiana educators is one that requires intentional, collaborative effort. In February, I attended the American Association of School Personnel Administrators National Educator Shortage Conference. There were a couple of others from Indiana in attendance, and we had a reflective conversation about how impactful it might be to bring the concept back to Indiana. So, as mentioned, earlier this week, we kicked off the first of 3 two-day Attract, Prepare, and Retain Connection Point Summer Summits in Avon. The next 2 will be held in Plymouth and Sellersburg. I wish I could share more about these sessions, but imagine a room filled with IDOE leaders, Commission for Higher Ed leaders, K-12 school leaders, teacher leaders, Department of Workforce Development staff, higher education, College of Education leaders, and deans of colleges of education, education-focused professional organizations, and others who committed valuable time to collaborate on solutions such as Grow Your Own, career ladders opportunities, mentoring, and various other topics related to the profession. I hope to revisit and share specifics about the collaborative relationships that come from these summits because there's so much potential, especially with the upcoming grant opportunity that was mentioned to support partnerships and initiatives focused on attracting, preparing, and retaining Indiana teachers.
And on that note, our very best ideas have come from local community level, completely. Learning Lab did, and the next 2 things you're about to hear about, also all from local idea development that we've been able to scale statewide.
Thank you. One of the common threads in conversations at the first summit was the need to change the narrative that exists about our great profession. The IDOE team launched a video series, Teachers Who Shaped Us, aimed to spotlight the positive impact teachers have and to celebrate Indiana teachers in an effort to elevate our profession. I encourage you to check out some of the inspirational videos if you haven't already. You definitely will not be disappointed. To add to the list of initiatives focused on supporting the educator pipeline, you've all heard about the partnership with the University of Indianapolis' Center of Excellence in Leadership to help educators reach full special education licensure. Interested candidates pursue their special education licensure through a university setting or transition program. University courses taken and passed through ISEAL partners are credit-bearing, and the numbers don't lie here. With nearly 350 educators enrolled through the help of ISEAL, we're addressing an immediate need and will see the impact in over 150 districts across the state. In addition to ISEAL, ASSET is a recently approved alternative licensure program that falls under the Transition to Teaching umbrella. The program is led by the Indiana Council of Administrators of Special Education and supports currently licensed Indiana educators who want to add a special education teaching credential. Successful completion of the ASSET program, coupled with passing the appropriate licensing exams, enables educators to add either the mild or intense interventions endorsement or both to their existing license. Unlike ISEAL, ASSET is a non-credit earning program that utilizes field experience opportunities coupled with intensive monthly learning sessions in special education content and pedagogy and will help prepare candidates. This program is 11 months long and is free to participants.
So just to hit that, if you are in Indiana and are interested in being a special education teacher, even if you're an active teacher or out in another industry, you have a free option to join us to serve our special education students. Hopefully that drives some numbers up too. We could use some additional support.
And you can come to Perry Township where we currently have 10 openings.
And there we go, and there we go.
Every superintendent in the state wants to chime in now too. Our educator licensing team has advocated for changes to reciprocity for several years, and the passage of HEA 1093 supports leveling the playing field for our out-of-state applicants as well. This ensures basically that the same rules now apply for the out-of-state applicants as in-state applicants in relation to license proficiency level awarded for mirroring degree and experience levels. Additional items of relevance that have an impact on teacher recruitment include SEA 356, which removed the 26-year-old age requirement language for an initial license via American Board, as long as they meet the requirements of holding a bachelor's degree from an accredited post-secondary 4-year institution, have completed an alternative teacher certification program, praxis subject assessment, and 1-year practical experience program, or in-state alternative teacher certification program, as well as holding a valid CPR certification and have attended youth suicide awareness and prevention training. However, special education is included from this provision, and the 26-year-old age requirement applies for those with an initial practitioner license. So those individuals cannot serve as teacher of record during that time period.
So what Rebecca's talking about right now, just to really hit this, because I don't think our educator community knows these options enough. We're going to seek to put more communications out, but these are new laws that allow additional flexibility in the educator pipeline that is based on local decision-making and recruiting.
Thank you. HEA 1251 provides flexibility as well to districts in an effort to recruit individuals through the use of a locally issued adjunct permit. There are requirements outlined in Indiana code that must be met, such as experience in the content area and expanded criminal history checks, and limitations to the types of positions that can be filled in this way, such as vacancies in special education. Additional guidance is being established, and as I mentioned earlier, we're working on guidance specific to how schools and candidates can utilize the educator supply and demand marketplace to advertise and apply for vacancies that can be filled by an individual through the issuance of a local adjunct permit.
And I think we need to move the slide forward.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right?
Thank you. I made sure to stick to the script so we wouldn't be here all day. I want to thank you for your time and allowing me the opportunity to share some of our work that our team has been prioritizing and also some general updates. Thank you.
So on that, before we open it up to the board for questions, if you are living outside of the state of Indiana and you happen to be one of our 12 viewers today, I don't know how many viewers we have, but I bet it's around that.
I hear it's going to be hot on YouTube later.
Then we welcome you to Indiana. We have additional reciprocity options for you to consider and that are more flexible. If you are, again, interested in joining the profession and you have not been in education, but you are interested in additional training, there are now options for you. Flexibility is increased. And then again, with that adjunct at the local level. So if you're interested in serving our 1.12 million students across the state, we are ready and eager at the local level, at the state level, to have a conversation with you on how you can join us in serving kids. On that note, any questions for Dr. Estes?
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
So on page 4, where it talks about 7,903 fewer public school students from 2012 to 2021, was there any research done that shows why those students are exiting public schools and where they're going?
So that is probably out of your division. So you can, I'll take that and we can always follow up on additional. Across the country with COVID, we saw enrollment patterns shift a bit. And in Indiana, we did see more of an increase in our non-public school population. So maybe that's a future presentation that we provide you as a board. In terms of why, everyone in this room would be able to share anecdotally why they think. I don't know that we have quantitative data on that, but we're glad to make that note for a future presentation so you can see the longitudinal look, similar to this 10-year look. Good question.
I agree with everything she said.
Yes, sir. Dr. Ernest.
Microphone's coming apart. What, did you just completed the summit at Avon, correct?
Correct, yesterday.
What, and I know it's too early probably to have deciphered, but are there any themes that came out of that, particularly related to, because a lot of this are the alternative, how do we help people get into the profession kind of things, which I'm all in favor of. What are the other, because I don't think that's everything, right? I still think there's reasons why we're not going into the profession in that. Were there any themes that came out on a higher level that you can, and I'm sure we're going to see that, but I'm just curious coming off that first first summit, what you
Absolutely.
found. Does my question make sense?
Absolutely. My answer might not match your question, but your question makes sense in my head.
Well, we'll
So,
match it up some way.
The two things that really came out of yesterday and the day before, the day prior, really came down to compensation and culture. So we talked a lot about like what does the structure of compensation look like, not necessarily teacher salary, but all things considered compensation, and then the culture and changing the narrative of what education is by making sure that our teachers are supported and that we're recruiting into the profession early on and supporting through like our Indiana GPS and providing opportunities and access earlier so that those high school timelines are open for students to explore more career-based options in the high school space. So the 4 buckets that came out of priorities that people wanted to dive into were grow your own, mentoring programs, and making sure that we're holding on to the teachers that we have, and then marketing and funding not necessarily in compensation, but funding the grow your own programming. And marketing was a huge aspect of the conversation. We have so many ed prep programs. We have so many licensure options and entryways into the fields. However, how are we marketing those to individuals in a way that attracts people from the high school space, from the para space, those considerations. And then career ladders was the other big bucket that came from the summits and how we're supporting those opportunities across the state.
Thank you. You did answer.
Does that
the
align to your question?
It is in line because you said culture, and I know one of the things my friend John O'Neill and I out there talk about a lot is retention in school. And you can go into schools and very quickly kind of know what they're going to tell you their teacher retention rate is, right? And it's based on culture, not just student culture, but the overall culture. So I think that's great that you said that. And then the other thing I wanted to see, if I could ask one more question.
Please.
Just because this morning I saw Ed Week just came out with a report that
I read it.
The one on that we don't complete in our transition to teaching programs, or that's a low completion. Anything came out of that related to that? And I know it's very early, but sorry, it's just
No, you're
on my
good.
mind.
We had conversations about that specifically because we had some preliminary people that had eyes on it yesterday at the summit. And it really came down to we're always going to be in a space where people are going to start something and not finish it. But I think the priority is providing as many options as possible for individuals to find a pathway that fits their lifestyle. And whether or not they complete them or not, it really comes down to sort of that mentoring and bringing them along, for the ride. One of the things that's really amazing about the potential for that second phase of the Nimble platform is the ability to sort of proactively recruit individuals. And if I know coming out of my ed prep program, I already have 5 superintendents that are interested in employing me across the state, I may be a little more motivated to go ahead and finish on time or early so that I can go into that position right away. So I think to the point of the article, yeah, I mean, that data exists, but ultimately I don't think it should shut down our efforts to continue to provide opportunities because you're gonna meet different people in different places.
And Rebecca, before you leave, I do want the board to know, because I think this is really incredible and special about you. Dr. Estes was a 21st century scholar right here in Indiana. And she proceeded to continue her education. You heard me say doctor. She recently got her doctorate from Purdue. And I only mention that because the board has recently, when we solidified our indicators, that the whole data story, one of the things we elevated as a board is that 21st century scholar indicator, to really understand that more. And so I just wanted to point that out. You have an incredible story, and we obviously can take that offline because this is a public board meeting, but your story is incredible. And
We had that
21st
conversation
century
with the commission yesterday at the summit.
Oh, you
because
did? Oh,
Greg
good.
Harrell was present talking about the Next Gen Scholarship in 21st century and all of the funding opportunities for
Yes.
future educators to tap into. So I don't often openly share it, but we had that conversation yesterday. And yeah, absolutely. There's lots of me's sitting in classrooms right now waiting for somebody to tap into them and say, hey, come, this is a great profession and you can influence the future. So absolutely.
Dr. Jenner, could I ask one quick question?
Yes.
all of this taken together, I was thinking about slide 6, which shows downward trend entering, upward trend exiting. Do we have forecast data about what we think that a lot of folks are talking about a tsunami of exit? Do we have that intel for our state?
We have the starting base of some of that data that I think we'll be more prepared to share out later on. But Nimble is giving us some of that access to that as we can pull our licensing reports and tell us how many teachers are eligible to teach in Indiana, but that also includes people who hold licensures that are no longer with us. It also includes people who are, like me, I hold an educator license, but I'm not in the K-12 space right now. So we're narrowing down the specific details about the data to do some of that forecast and projecting of what specifically that looks like in the future.
Yes, sir.
I
Mr.
also
Mapes.
think it's worthwhile for us to look at, maybe with teacher retirement office, the number of people who are eligible to retire at this point.
Yep.
And we're seeing that. I mean, a lot of them, and thank goodness, stayed with us through the pandemic because they didn't want to end their career teaching through a pandemic. But we're still seeing a constant number of around 50 to 55 teachers retiring each year since I've been at Perry for the last 6 years. And I think we also just have a graying out of our profession in the state of Indiana. And we do have several people who, we had a year ago somebody who 72 years old
Yes.
who finally retired. But I think that's going to be the next big wave that we have, other than people just changing, that tidal wave of people leaving the profession. But I think some data from TURF could probably also help us.
Yes, yes. And, I mean, you know the impetus of which to build the supply-demand marketplace is that we were operating as a state, as many states are, with very much lag data in our pipeline, sometimes 2 years behind. So we have to have real time and these trajectories that both of you mentioned, and we are eager and actively building those out. And thank you, Dr. Estes, for your
Absolutely.
leadership.
Thank you for
We
your time.
appreciate it. So at this time, I will invite Maggie Stevens from Foster Success to please come forward. We also have, I think, a couple people online, if you would be willing to introduce them. I know Joan Smith is from the Department of Education, and there are a couple of others. So
Absolutely.
Maggie, thank you for being here.
Yes, thanks for making time for us to be with you this morning. As Dr. Jenner said, my name is Maggie Stevens, and I serve as the CEO and president of Foster Success. We are a statewide nonprofit working with the state's older foster youth as they transition out of care. And we have been working with the Department of Education, the Department of Child Services, specifically over the last 4 to 5 years, looking at the education outcomes of our older foster youth. And so Melena Gant is here from DCS, Joan Smith from DOE is online, and Allie Leonard, a young woman who is aging out of foster care, has joined us online today. Some of you have seen me here before to talk about our education outcomes. The reality is we've been tracking data for 4 years as a result of HEA 1314 back in 2018. Unfortunately, probably not terribly surprising, we haven't moved the needle. I am excited that we're starting to see a lot more collaboration between all of our units over the past year. And really with Joan being at the Department of Education in particular, she is really working to reach with our educators on the ground in the buildings in the districts who are supporting our students in foster care. And so today we just want to highlight a couple of the findings, but more importantly, the work that we are actively working to do so that a year or 2 or 3 from now, we can say we're moving the needle. We can say we're changing the story for our young people in foster care in our schools. So I'm going to turn it over. I think Melena's going to go really quickly, share a couple of key points, and then our colleagues on the screen. But we really want to dedicate most of our time this morning to Allie Leonard so that she can talk about her education journey as a young woman in foster care and highlight one of the resources we just shared with you that she has created for educators and will be distributing. So thank you. Oh, I didn't even advance. I'm sorry.
That's okay. She talked so fast, I'm going to pass through the slides that she talked about. Like Maggie said, my name's Melena Gant. I'm the Director of Education Services at DCS, and I'm also the state point of contact as it pertains to the Every Student Succeeds Act. So that being said, Joan and I are counterparts with each other at DOE and DCS. And so we collaborate quite often. And so some of the things that we found as the key findings from the 2020-2021 school year were that 90% of our students in foster care were enrolled in traditional public schools, and 5% were in our public charter schools. Our youth were less likely to graduate on time when compared to the general population students. And those that did were more likely to graduate with a waiver in place. One challenge is that our graduates were earning less rigorous diplomas, which sets them up to be less prepared for life after high school. Twice as many of our youth received general diplomas and compared to all students. When we're looking at the honors diploma, general population students earned them at a rate 3 times that of our foster. Retention rates for our youth are at an alarming rate of 3 times higher than all students. Another significant challenge is exclusionary discipline. Our youth in foster care were twice as likely to be suspended and 4 times as likely to be expelled. While this information is disheartening, we have used this data. We have taken more positive and collaborative steps to better support the educational outcomes for our youth in care. We've done this collaboratively through DOE and DCS and also with Foster Success and other organizations. In 2022, DOE and DCS have been more proactive in providing training opportunities for our local schools and also our DCS offices. Regarding ESSA, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act, and how true implementation of the requirements specific to our youth will positively impact the outcomes for them. DOE and DCS have a bidirectional data exchange in place through MPH that will allow real-time educational data to be shared on all students in care. And it is projected to be fully implemented by mid-year 2023. This is very exciting. This is something that not all states in the nation have, and Indiana is highlighted when we go to the national convening of all ESSA point of contacts. We're one of the states that are highlighted for the collaboration and communication between DOE and DCS. That's a huge step. We're ahead of the game. In addition to this, DCS has also increased the educational consultants that are on the team that I oversee. We now have 15 to serve the whole state. And also, DOE created an amazing action plan to better support the schools in their education of our youth, and Joan is going to go over that with you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having all of us. So like Melena said, we looked at this data and we knew that something different needed to be done. So using this data, as well as the fact that I surveyed the foster care points of contacts across the state at the beginning of the year, and I used their survey data as well, these were the 4 action goals that we came up with. So the first is to encourage districts to enact positive discipline practices and deliver resources to districts that will reduce the suspension and expulsion of students in foster care. Number 2, broaden and intensify services and supports offered to students in foster care in order to increase graduation rates. 3, create and share a variety of targeted professional development resources specific to the role of foster care point of contact, clarifying the expectations and responsibilities of the point of contact and the specific needs of foster youth. And lastly, create a blueprint of communication and processes to help and support increased collaboration among foster youth, foster families, DCS education services, LEAs, and community-based service providers. Hopefully then, successful models of collaboration will have the opportunity to be replicated across the state. There is a hyperlink within this, and actually in the back of the report that you should have all received, which further explains all of these goals, kind of the actionable steps that we're hoping to be able to take in order to make these goals a reality. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to quickly go over some of the steps that we already have taken since the January of 2022. Because of that survey, we found out that a lot of our points of contacts were not fully understanding their role and responsibilities, and there's a lot of transition within that role. So we created a standard operating procedures document that outlined what that role entailed. Then DCS, Foster Success, and myself met and actually had a foster care points of contact webinar. We had 2 with over 400 points of contacts in attendance. DCS, along with Mike Larocco and myself, did a transportation training because we noticed that one of the barriers in getting our students to school is lack of transportation, or that transportation is lagging. Foster Success sent out an e-blast because we're hoping to have a foster care conference on September 8th this fall. And then I am going to let Allie Leonard take over for this last one because it's, in my opinion, our most exciting resource, and one that I'm very excited for you guys to hear about today.
Thank you, Joan. Can everybody hear me? Good? Okay. My name is Allie Leonard, and I will be a senior this fall at IU Bloomington. And I'm also a Jim Casey Young Fellow and have been since 2021, which has allowed me the opportunity to work on a lot of different projects, and most recently this flashcard, which comes from personal experience as well as a combination of my peers' experiences as well across the state. And basically, what we found was that intentional and consistent contact with foster youth has a lasting influence on their choices in the classroom. And that can be behavioral, and that can be even just their motivation. And it also makes them feel more connected to their community. I had positive and negative experiences, but if it wasn't for the counselors at my first high school, I don't think I would have known how to apply to college, which I ended up doing on my own. And there are 2 points actually on the card that I really wanted to highlight for everyone. And the first one was the ask, don't assume. So meeting the person where they're at and taking the time to see where they're at just kind of represents that their individual progress does matter, and it makes them more likely to engage. And then the second one is to be involved in their response plans and to make sure that it's appropriate for them, especially given how much time young people actually spend in the classroom versus at home, which again kind of correlates with the behavior issues as well. And like I said, this is a combination of both positive and negative experiences that have really stuck with myself and a lot of other foster peers that have had lots of transitions through different high schools, as I did, and I've actually been all across the state from Brown County all the way up to Indianapolis. And so I had to experience a lot of different curriculum and a lot of different teaching styles and just school structure, and even just extracurricular opportunities were very different in different areas of the state. And so I think with those different experiences, this is a card that is hopefully going to be in the hands of more than just points of contacts, and hopefully teachers and SROs and really anybody that has contact with youth in schools, because it's just a good friendly reminder of how you can meet them on their level and hopefully actually connect with them and make a difference in their life. So.
Thanks, Allie. Just one quick thing to wrap up. So as Allie said, we've created this card really under her direction and with feedback from her peers. And our goal is, we've sent a hyperlink out to foster care points of contact, encourage them to share it. But as Joan mentioned, we are working to do an educators conference in September to really bring the voices of Allie and her peers to a space with educators from across the state and highlight what has worked well in schools, what has helped young people be successful, and encourage other schools, districts, and leaders to adopt some practices at the school and district level. We'll distribute these cards to educators there, but also send it out so that schools and school leaders can print them, share them in their schools, include foster care point of contact in them. Again, trying to build a network of resources so that nobody is trying to figure this out alone, whether it's a student, a teacher, or an administrator in the school building. Additionally, we are working to continue to educate judges, other school leaders, administrators on the laws out there about how we need to support our students in foster care, again, so that in a couple years when we come back here, we can actually say the needle has started to move. We are graduating more students, fewer are graduating with waivers, and we've started to tackle some of these problems. So thank you for your support. We are all welcome, or all open to answering any questions or sharing more information. And thank you to Joan and especially Allie for the work that she has put into this. And she is leading the way to bring more youth voice to our conference in September. So we'll make sure you know about that, and maybe you'll be able to join us as well.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate you sharing this information, sharing really quite frankly, the level setting on data, but the action plan forward. And I want to echo you. It's a special thank you to Allie for being so honest with your experience. One thing, Allie, that, I mean, you said several important, thoughtful comments. One thing that I did hear you say, and that I certainly saw when I was in the schools, and I'm sure others did as well, is that you moved around to several schools. I think you said from Brown County to Indianapolis. And that was one data piece that I think would be important for us to peel back to get to that solution on what is the transient population. What does that look like for our foster students? And, you know, as the board ahead, as we contemplate diploma flexibility, as we contemplate more data modernization and alignment of even a record transfer. I mean, we see, right, when Allie, when you go from a school to school, there's sometimes delay in getting your records transferred. And then you have to be your own advocate. So we're contemplating a lot of that in terms of improving this space. So have you looked at any transient population data? How many schools does a foster student attend on average? Any of that data?
So unfortunately, that data hasn't been available as of yet. But however, one of the things that we're hoping to be able to do is correlate the data between DCS data and DOE data so that we can find out that information. Not only that information, but also can we find out mental health diagnoses and whether or not there's enough support for the child in the school setting, but also in the home setting, so that what is working in the school setting transitions into the home setting so that we can have a little more permanency with our children, because we believe that education is a path to permanency. Because we know that if a school disruption happens often, we're more likely to have a disruption in the home, and then we have movements like what Allie has experienced. And what we want to do is minimize what Allie has experienced, and that's the whole spirit of ESSA and the best interest determinations that come through that process. So yes, we are working to do that. Again, that won't happen until both systems are ready to communicate with each other, and they are in integration mode right now, the data folks are. And our last report out, and Joan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the last report out was that we're looking at mid-2023 for full implementation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So yeah, that's helpful to know. And I know we're working a lot on the agency level to integrate systems. The one thing that I'll take as an action item for the department is to get with our CIO, John Keller, if you're listening. I don't see you in the room. We have an action item for you, my friend. But to understand at the school level, if we report the foster student, if we have that data at all, because our systems now, for the first time ever this year, talk from school to state, we can do some pretty quick analytics. And even if we have that data, they could even potentially be a student population group within our Indiana GPS, so we can better understand the data story. So there are some things that we can do now. The other agency I'm sure we're working with, I know we are, is FSSA on that mental health services. So we have several state agencies that are a part of this triad, in addition to, of course, our external partners in trying to find solutions and support our students. So any other questions from our board members? Thoughts or questions? Yes, William.
Just a quick question. I love this foster care flashcard. I think it's awesome. So great job, Allie, for putting that together. I think that's amazing. My question is, in reference to the foster care flashcard, how can youth serving organizations get access to this? Because they may be serving foster care youth in their programming at their organizations.
Executive Director of 100 Black Men.
Okay.
So I think that's a direct line, asking for all and him, yes.
That's
Well,
very
I can
true, yeah.
definitely send it to you.
thank
It is available on the Foster Success website, and we are going to continuously work throughout the summer and the fall to make sure that we are just pushing it out to more people. I firmly believe the more people who are aware of our youth in foster care and are available to support them, the better we all are, and more importantly, the better they will be. So I'd love to share that with you and brainstorm other ways to get it out to partners. Thank you.
Ms. Moat?
This is a kind of a nerdy observation, but you may enjoy it. You spoke about student agency around their records, and that being like a real opportunity in terms of better facilitating, like if that's one of the contributing factors to some of the disruption and delays and so on and so forth. Arizona State University is working on a concept called the Trusted Learner Network, which is a way to securely empower and facilitate students to be able to communicate their records without being dependent on the issuing entity. Like in higher ed, like it's super cool. It's very early, and I mention it because Indiana is such a powerhouse in leading the way on data, on the connectivity across these systems, which would be critical for this to work in a pilot environment. So anyway, I throw that out there. If you Google Trusted Learner Network in ASU, it's going to come up. It could be a really interesting learning opportunity or not, but that was what was coming up for me as I was listening to you. Higher ed is an easier space to move, in my view, because of just the moment in time for the student to be able to have that power over. I mean, they earned it. They paid for that piece of paper, and then you got to go through somebody else, which is pretty nuts. So in the K-12 space, it could be interesting if that's a contributing factor. That could be a vehicle to look into to smooth some of that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We're at Foster Success, we're actually working right now to create virtual lockers to hold other vital documents. So it could be academic records, copies of birth certificates, et cetera, because those unfortunately get lost and people need images of those. So that's a great resource. I appreciate you sharing that.
Also, I just want to add that that is a goal of the Education Outcome Task Force through the Commission on Improving the Status of Children, and it's an education passport. So I will be sharing that with Ms. Julie Whitman so that she knows that there's that resource as well, because we didn't know about that one. So thank you.
Thank you so much to Foster Success, DCS, DOE, and Ally for coming forward today and presenting this important information. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before we have a motion to adjourn, because I know I usually have some eager adjourners, next month, July, you remember last year we partnered with the National Center for Assessment as a state to review our post-COVID impact. That data, we will have, that's a multi-year study. So the July 13th meeting will be a very important meeting for Indiana as we see broken down by all of our student populations, their proficiency and growth following what we saw in our benchmark year last year. So just wanted you to know that is what our next meeting will be focused on, what we have learned. On that note, do we have a motion to adjourn? No one was going to do it today because I said you're eager.
So moved.
BJ Wells.
Second, aye.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.